A little bit tired.
Yeah.
This 당시에도.
능 것도 되게 되고 민나라. 같이 불 쳐면 돼. 차에 안 치는 데 있더라.
So maybe if we don't need the fan, we can turn it off.
Maybe 심바 되는 데 오사.
Or maybe you can stay some
here or something. It's okay? Good? Okay.
Quran got this.
Otherwise we can sit here.
With fan or without fan?
Huh?
With fan, without fan?
I'm okay, but you.
All right. So if you don't enjoy staying under the fan, you can stay anywhere, yeah, away from the fan.
Okay, as long as this is off, I'm okay.
Yeah. Digasta. 당아도 다기디 로서상 백칠라 라이드라. 아니 다들라. 대신 이모치 다디 가서 나오더시라. 필리핀 대신 이모치요 네스. 아니 예히 린디 찍네 장스. nenjokpa yeshin lens meshi pen toroches ta dinde yude khalesna tejen yomochi yo pe sla de kasan yomoda demba de yelesra ani yeshi ta chebe is lundi is yeshi ta meshi ta shiba dinde khalor penanela chuda omande badan ambe gi shigir lora tinasigi tende yeshi soso de lenji bi hira de deman rana goba de lembada ani mugoba de pamba to de shingesara ene yihilin de chigla changase nenjo pei yehilense nenjo pei gita ji tende nenjo pa de zugi ani tenda ngabandan dawe nenjo pa asera ani di ani oma dan dawe ani yeshilen bala de galata lenyi jibi shiregu nalu shiredu tsatang lembala sera ani chudan dawa mishiba de papango ba na ta shiba de tlengo ba tele sera ani chudan de mishiba ne dorachi de osle.
So now at the turn of the last session we were talking about this metaphor about a crane being able to take the milk out of the mixture of water and milk. Now, citing that example, we move on to the next verse, which is verse number 63. So there is primordial awareness. They are covering afflictions when both are found together in one body, but where both are found together in one body, but the primordial awareness is what yogis and yoginis choose to take and leave the ignorance behind. So, herein, within ourselves is the primordial awareness, that clear light mind. And there is the afflictions which cover that basic nature of clear light of the mind. And both are found in the basis of the same body, the same aggregates, this very body. But the primordial awareness is what the yogis and yoginis choose to take. So herein, how it's talking about how through discerning wisdom, one overcomes the afflictions and one is able to realize the purity of awareness itself and leave ignorance behind.
Dada dagin zembe penanga dadan zemba dagiwan zemba la tende zemba digi chisi shuro chisi ta chisi toyebala na chisi yesu ngobo nam chisi do ngobo namba demba towa ina demba towa na tab tadende shuro gi ngobo la taba cheba ina asra ani khoa tang ta khoa tang la digala da taba na as dami namba ni thone ta dami namba ni dikarasna de kansa gi dami de chugi dami sheminra tende de sugi thonsne yihiti gi thon anas ani sibi saben ga banjere ta khande kharlosna tende ane 나도 다다 다기만 잡아대 바밤비 토네 아니 딘데 시르디 가르스나 아니 담에도 비시르라 데가 시르디 아니 간사게 담에도 추게 담에 통와이나 아니 시비 사변 정 줄레데 시바 코알레 코데게 아니 사변도 짜와도 제바 아니 반가반지루레스 디스음스라.
So now moving on, verse number 64. For as long as I and mine are held to exist, and the outside is imagined as well, when both forms of selflessness are seen, the seed of existence is destroyed. So herein, it is talking about how we discussed extensively before. As long as there is the conception of the I, then all our experiences are influenced, shaped, and filtered through that conception. So as such, all outer and inner objects will be filtered through that conception of the I. So for as long as I and mine are held to exist, so as long as you hold on to the conception of the I and mine, then you will begin to superimpose. You will continue to conceptualize outer and inner objects. But when one begins to see the selflessness of the person and the selflessness of phenomena, then the seed of existence, samsaric existence, is destroyed.
예, 다디 들려라. 간시 산제 냥인데스. 지제 관계시나. 다 가서 산제 고발하는데 냥일인데 버디라. 아니 다다 장왕자마다 따번자마이나. 장와 따바 게위시스. 게위시 바데 당제. 제가 근데 장대 따다든 점바데스라. 데스 당제 지르샤. 당제 당스 간시 테니 근데 아니 장장 잡아다 아니 딱반점에 근데 가르선 점바디바 점바디니바 지바나지 딱베스 파타지 제와이나라 뭐 답바이 대이님이 nenjurunis tini meba tokbadi dinde ane chante tada zema meba tokbadi nenjul ne thugures ta lo tokbadi khasa nyang de la ne thugure
So moving on, the Dharmadatu is the ground for Buddhahood, nirvana, purity, and permanence. The immature impute the two kinds of self, and yogis and yoginis abide without these two. So the Dharmadatu, the true nature of the reality, is the ground from which Buddhahood is possible. Nirvana, liberation, is possible. Purity, purity free from afflictions and obscurations, is possible. Permanence, permanence abiding in unchanging nature the abiding in the unchanging nature of reality. And as such, the immature, the immature or the sentient beings who are still covered by obscurations, still suffer through the afflictions, begin to impute the two kinds of self. The two kinds of self are the self of person and self of phenomena. And yogis and yoginis abide without these two. Yogis and yoginis do without the conception of the self and do without the conception of phenomena. Self of person, that's the I. Self of phenomena, wherein you impute the word pen onto the collection of the parts.
And the both forms of selflessness in the previous
Same. So when it says that as long as I and mine are held to exist, because if we think about it, as long as we conceive of an I, it is natural that we begin to also conceive of a mine, that which belongs to the I. So if we begin to conceive of that which belongs to the I, we'll continue to conceive of a self in phenomena. My body, my mind, and so forth. The Dagla Zimba Diana, Dagiwa Zimba Legurus. Dagiwa Zimba Lena, Chuji Dazinti and Taran Lingures. Ne Pumbola, the Zimba Dembaduba Zimburas.
지당가 들이다 나다 ngayon zembalai드라 mambuji tamu ngalingda ra ngas nge yedo ngi tomo phama pinge dendelingda 가장 안들이 잼바디 베디도 문에래 가장 예수제니 된 저슈도 잘라지나 잘라디 톰래 because 파기라 지기 짜 안데시는 아주 싫어시다 돈을리입니다. 다디 잘라디 파기 통 딜래 아포지 통 다가도 응우tin 스뉴라 다 스뉴는 큰 랑가라 차셔는 다 쇼판 거다. 라 갈라나 담보 파기를 예비네 그 차바다 수술라발리 차바다 집어라 이네 디퍼룰 수기 렘바지티는 다 니레냐 로지바 수수고 수사라 라 데 캔서 슈다 근데 라식 레다 안서 슈체리
So, this is indeed true that as long as we conceive of an I, then it is natural that on the basis of that conception, we also begin to conceive of that which belongs to the I. So, for example, when we conceive of an I, we begin to conceive of that which is close, that which is near, that which is dear to the I. So we have a natural sense of attachment to our near and dear ones. Then similarly, we need to procure things, objects for ourselves. And we want to call these objects ours, mine. So look at the manner in which this affects the experience. For example, the same object could be in the market, and if the object gets broken, destroyed, and so forth, it doesn't inspire the same kind of reaction in us because it's not ours. But when that object comes into our possession, if we buy it, whatever, but it comes into our possession, then the moment there's a small tear, small break, immediately the experience is now different. It's the same object, it is suffering the same damage, but we want to call it our own. There is the conception of mine now.
야 나저기 수수기 빈자이지나래 소소 파마집에 빈자이나래 미신바지는 지나 집어라 군위에 대원도 받아 동이면 집어 청어 수수기 녀석이 빈자로 지금 나샬라나 남상안절로 천하칠리다 라 난 신바지 나샬라나 지나데 미지 나샬라나 가서 니지 지다 유지르데 수수기 빈자로다 파만 나와나 시기 천하등 가서 레입니다 그 가르래 뢰게 땅에서 타 녀버러져서 라
So this conception of I and mine really dictates our experience of reality. For example, try to think about this manner that we call our near ones and our dear ones, our relatives, our friends, our near ones, our dear ones. And as such, if they go through any kind of suffering, then immediately we have some sense of concern. Now, when we think about someone else that we don't call our own, our near one, our dear one, if they are going through the same kind of suffering, we do not have the same kind of reaction. And why exactly is this? Because we have conceptions of nearness and farness on the basis of that which we call ours and not ours, that which we call mine and not mine. So, in essence, all sentient beings are similar in wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. But our reaction to other people's suffering is dictated by the conception of the I and mine.
So once this conception of the I and mine is destroyed, does it follow automatically that the seed of existence and all objects lose their intrinsic objectivity or like the belief that they're real, or that investigation continues separately with objects such as the trees or which exist not as belonging to I but they exist?
Yes, so that's why, as we already discussed before, from a Buddhist spiritual perspective, out of the two selflessnesses, selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena, one is advised first to address the selflessness of person, to overcome I, to overcome conception of I and mine, and then extend the same investigation to phenomena too. That's the order in which one is advised to cultivate meditation on emptiness.
So it doesn't automatically follow, like if
Not automatically. There is no such thing as automatically. Even when you begin to realize at one point that indeed the I has no intrinsic nature, that what I call mine has no intrinsic nature, but still, one moment of realization is not enough. Because when we think about it, we have to still employ conceptual thought to think about intrinsic nature, lack of intrinsic nature. And by contemplating on lack of intrinsic nature again and again and again, you overcome the use of reason itself at one point. Wherein, as we already stated before, like right now, if we have to think about the lack of intrinsic nature, not even think. Now, herein we are talking about coming to a conviction, coming to a certainty about the lack of intrinsic nature of the cup. Then we have to use our conceptual thought at this point. It's only through conceptual thought we can begin to appreciate the lack of intrinsic nature of the cup. But through familiarizing yourself with that conceptual thought again and again and again and again, contemplating on the lack of intrinsic nature of the cup again and again, there comes a point wherein when the cup appears, but at that moment there comes a point wherein you do not have to employ any reasons anymore. That when the cup appears, immediately you are able to recognize the lack of intrinsic nature in the cup. At that moment, then you would have overcome the conception of intrinsic nature. Moi dilagir tanda nganzugi chilera nganzugi kansagi danzi ra kansagi dada chugi dala etinasra antangbo ngada ngai tada dagi wala edi ani tornasra tegi zimbadi tornasra tema tagdo ngangi ngone ra ani nganzugi chugi danzi jira tian tordugiro elasra tende mare la 당보 간족이 테마탁도 돌래지 요 말이래. 당당 간족이다 간족이 창심기 살아 있는 똑박이 주네 모두 똑이 말래게 저지 시사라. 제상 간족이 줄라다 간족이다 가두 있는 분바 포르바디어라. 랑원에 마두버 다 녀고요나. 똑박이 주네 준센라 때문에 녀고도 한지미지. 다 델라 템바치 상다 니손 시시 템바 망고 지네 녀와 이줄라랑 두비오 한지라. 갑티 되점바 갑직라 녀와데라 두베 세디 Pumba porba de Michel no ansam jisra junsen chikana to mogo toba la to mogo rangshingi khoge ne demar maduba chi to tizu dela yune rangun maduba chi to tizu dela tidu zama ani zimba thorata temena anzogi toba pheju ton de ra ta
tichi 가장 코들을 찍게 관한서 돌린으로 치래 봐 친
and that's one thing. Now were you able to discuss among yourselves the question that I left you with? What?
Yes.
Yesterday? Kunzu che Thomasons.
심사.
I think it was a bit overwhelming yesterday, so we decided to take a break.
Kazan kunzu tanda che sons ra che zan ni parsengle his. Chemis.
네, 일단 가서 오늘 전에 마시지 마 아버지 강이 뭐 아버지 ngan 잡아디 길리기도 알아. 단단하지 라이디페나 대기 미치를 가서 미 수수기 뭐 마신지 미치를 강이 좋아도 수수기 빈자를 강이 주는 가서 제발 통구다. 파자가 더는 군이들 콜라 미셔머디에 차다 나다 루빠다 저거 초바 두셔지래라. 수수기 빈자디에 다가라라. 그냥 가서 찌빠찌짱 군이라 아니지 가 선대유나 여념 선대면은 매념지 인고에로도 예. 이는 가서 뒤입니다. 뒤 간대로 일리기도 춘수 다 콜라시 차차야 말래고야 다 콜라 말래와 진세 가르 Piga sana stan chilla susu rati ya passing do chi de indra rati this tawo de ngazo macha ni kale mundura.
So since we wouldn't have any trouble finishing the text itself, and just as a break in between, maybe we look at this question first. Try to think about, is it indeed the case that all of our experiences of suffering, all of our problems that we face really do come from this conception of the self. And when I say this, try to first look at this example that I just highlighted. Why is it there is a difference in the reaction that we have to suffering of others? When we look at it, it's the same. They are both same human beings. When they are hurt, they begin to bleed. They have the same emotional distress when they are hurt. But then why do we have a difference in difference in the reaction that we have to other people's suffering, wherein we become more concerned about the suffering of those who we call our own?
지금 미래를 라다 딩원의 개천보다 아주 뒤쳐보더라시 길래 되더라.
And this kind of difference in reaction is looked at as something natural, but it is important to examine this carefully. Maybe we hear from all of you, one by one.
Yeah, quite like.
Can I share something from direct experience? Something as I have reflected upon this. When I look at this mind, when I'm suffering, or even by causing harm to another person, or them causing harm to me, something of that sort, this mind feels like a very intense sort of sensation in the body and a great contraction. And lately, I have been observing how to deal with it, or how to investigate it further. There are, for instance, whether to investigate it with a kind of self-inquiry of like what is the sensation, or whether to use conventional subjective systems of psychological aids or things, whether that would be more wise. And this has been something I've been, because when it becomes clear that ultimately it is this conception of the I, which if eradicated, this thing wouldn't exist. What remains is a sense of freedom, and the problem isn't there. It only exists because of the I. I got someone, they got me, and all the stories that come from there. So once that whole structure has also become used, and it has become clear that this is the root of it, then what is the skillful means to go about when these situations arise, because they keep arising as we exist. Like in a meditation, it is sometimes it feels like when I go into this investigation, it feels like, okay, where am I? And a certain sense of, but then it is also disorienting. So, and then you go back into your life and some kind of challenges keep coming. So I wanted to understand what would be recommended as the correct balance.
So when you say it, conventional psychological aid, what do you mean? Therapy and so forth?
Yeah.
Okay. Tini moi dilait chiwar du yera.
Sure.
Tini kurangi nyongwa la susu gita tekar nyongwa chunju jira.
Mini la ra, mini mandra nido.
Tiki chamash.
Tiki tira.
You didn't listen to the question actually.
Answer the question.
I answered the question.
You answered the question. The question is the question.
Yeah, because I've been,
Geshema is asking. So you started with saying that you want to speak from your direct experience. So I translated that, and Geshema said, okay, with regards to the difference in reaction to the suffering of others.
yeah, but it also feels like my suffering, right? I see someone suffering.
Okay, let me first translate all that you said to her, okay? Tango morangila jodi chi jurna ya samara. Mogi dikola da shemas. Kurang chiwaret.
Okay.
Kurang gi tegar gi nyongwa chungya la asra. Ani susu gi semde la pataje chen de zamba asra. Ani susu gi mission la neba chen na ya asra. Yana susu rang dungye la nar shimba ina ya asra. Ani dendre susu gi mission la neba chen na shengi tsula neba chen na ya. Tema yinbe susu rang dungye gi nar dewe kabla asra. Lo de la pataje chen de zamba tsowa chapo shi udo as de zamba. Ani tsowa chapo yoba mase ani semba thambo do. Semba thambo do shukchimbo shivu tsogi dosra. Ta nganzo gi thanda la de zamba ani dungye zangwa gi ni shi ta chungsa tsawa dawa di danzin resung gyo was. Kisi ta dendre dawa ji na ani ngansu ki ta danzin di nga gi ani kanyi res lane nga la kanyi chungsa tsangma gi shi di danzin re lane ngoy zin tu gyo res. Ina ya ngoy zin tu na yang sira ani ta samlo ma tang yung di zamba ani tapshi do kari yo res ta danzin di thore la yo ra. Pena cha shena ani nganzo ki tsamda konzo ki lu tempa nyesha ki gomdo jayang goda. Tempa nyesha gomgo zang tsoa tempa nyesha la ji gomgo yung gora. Tsoa kari yo ne yongchu ani tela chik yotap ma che kaktap ma che la yo. Tendre ki ani gomji nyale ji pengi re so sra. Yana ani nganzo ki chirdang nganzo ki ta tesang tingdu semkham ki lopso tengi mangbo yo ra. Amji la lopso tengi go yo ra. Tezula tengo re so sra. Yamena tapshi ngoma di kare re sta. Tedawe ani dagzin di thore la ra. Kisi dagzin di thor tana ani tharba la na rawa la na ngoma chi yor was. Ani bed tendre semba busu dokbo tsoa nombo tendre mayimba chi yor la yor was chizang.
Chizang wu di ngo sime chi dingi thoti ra. Manzo ke dangze pangore la dina tamji ki pang goba ji hako. Khajin pangore tsoa di mandawa nyi khandis ligidu ra. Shichipachi janji la ji pegi thana kombu gi dibigi shichipachi la yang anzo ge chile tsoa shu chembole chik ligimda. Tangbo ale ti khandis ligidu. Tini ninja la chipa tatuna ale kali kali ma chomegi di changura. Tangbo ngazo zendad khandis tawoda.
So now, even though understanding that overcoming the conception of the I can help us to overcome the manner in which we react to situations and so forth is a good thing, but more importantly, we have to be able to recognize the conception of the I within ourselves when it arises and how it influences us. That's why the question. Look at the reaction, difference in reaction to others' suffering. And why exactly is there a difference of reaction to others' suffering? Because it's the same basis if we think about it. Two people, human beings, made out of flesh, born with the same expectation of happiness, wanting to avoid suffering. This is the same basis, but still there is a difference in our reaction. And why exactly is it that? Are we able to recognize how this conception influences our reactions? This is more important first. Maybe only Drama can share.
I think it's a little bit similar to the example, excluding that I used things as an example, but in the supermarket, right? So when there is the thing in the shelf and it doesn't have anything to do with us and it breaks down, so I don't care, right? But when my mom or another close friend is getting sick, I immediately care. But when it's someone I don't know, I don't care that much. Maybe I have a general compassion, of course, I do, but it's not affecting me so much, right? And I think it has also to do in the end the own fear of our own suffering in the end. So when my mother would die, immediately I would suffer terribly, right? And I think this is also a little bit influenced, the own fear of the own suffering, right?
Ti ani Drama la chena thaging anzo tromla chala gi pesha de chiparos. Tromla yudiz mas chana rena susu semde chi yo maris. Susu gi tawang dule ende zama tene yan so nomba da yong das. Te de jibaris ani pena chashana pin susu gi pama pinchi la sapa mahimba chi la ne na da chuna susu la ta chirdang ninji da yoji res ra ne te da ne semsor thabo ra semko thabo chi legi na ras. Ina da susu pama da pinchi la sapa de la ani chignu se raw da ne na da tis chuna lam san semsor thabo yong yo res. Ta di thabo yong go e jumse chikta danze ro asta. Ina samlo chi ne phata yong de zamba te ya bo te yong de zamba jigba chembo ji res so la jignam shenang chembo ji res ra. Kajana na kisi khonso na nasra. Ngala dungye ra. Ra. Khonso la na kho ngala ngai cha chembo zi de ra. So yang semba pam semba cho de chi ra. Te da yani sudu marong yan dungye chi so la theba ra gi re samne ra. Samsang gi ta yani semsor shuk chembo chi gi res.
Chezang tadi pa te dora kesi khonzo la kangi thena nge yo jugur nga chi chewson chik chile ora ra chini chiri ko khalana khona da tha nyebu je tla war tai chila sa ra ti chen le wala ra 그래. 지당 가서 잠자 엔데르다. 지당 가서 간데스 란시기 질레 오더라. 섭다 땡에 말라샤와 갈라나 만족이 페나 타 녀사지다 타 미니스 강이 좀 지자 있나라. 찍들 란슈기 찍레 오. 페나 다 파마로 오케이 가서 갈라 샤타든 데디 비찬 데기 타냐 왜 미치지. 대마인 페이지에 미션바지나 소소 게게게루지네 양라 소소지기 ndao 서지래야 콜로강이 주셔라는 안 람서 마대야 차이다 수단데 카 민질래야 둥이슈네 계상무다 야양 잠자 미치 참매 인데 마부이네 소소래 개변다 개고지기 개고지 매바이네 따당기 미실래 야보통야지 찔 두제통야지다 따당이 거기 재단질 근데 미 남들 재단 지금 소소나 만다서지 미질래 강이 주네 소화시다 말레지 소소 그따서 거의 아버도사에 미들 강이 주나 만족이 지 로기 마스요 했지다 배는 한테 때문을 따나 하고다 라 만족을 빼켄자다 때문나로라 다디 부모모 때문 텀니 주라 디인장 한정 오신거 말에 때문 싸워서지다 와이나 디나로 재단 미지기 재단 캐자로 치는 콜 두제 주네 뜻뜻 준다더도 된 지들 야보로 정로 채나 사메로 마주는 새 마가야도 파면도 들리다 만생 아주 로기 파서다 진짜 로를 제바 재단이야 동부디 근데 우대 용도
So now maybe if I speak a little bit at this point, the reason that we first must examine the manner in which our reactions are shaped by this conception of the I is because most of our reactions we look at it as justified reactions, natural reactions. And why does it feel justified, natural? Because this conception of the I is so ingrained. That's why in Buddhism we call it the innate conception of the I. It's so ingrained within ourselves. So that's why we say that all our reactions are justified and natural. And we don't think about it. So that's why it is important to examine that first, the manner in which it influences our reactions. Now, so that's why we are looking at these examples of parents suffering and then someone else going through the same suffering. We do not have the same reaction. Now maybe this hits a little bit too close to the home when we use a parent example like a parent or a relative. Now try to think about this. In a crowd, you don't know anyone, but then in a crowd you don't know the people, but you see them all the time. But when you look at it, you would begin to notice that there are some people whose outer expressions you do not like. Some people you've never spoken to them, and you will begin to appreciate whatever they do. Yes? And now try to think about the difference in the reaction when these two people suffer. Okay? Same reaction. It inspires the same reaction. You do not care about the one you do not like. You only begin to become a little bit concerned about the one you seem to like. Then similarly, look at the manner in which we become so engrossed in a movie when we watch it. The manner in which we become so invested in the story. Our reaction has no effect at all on the story, what happens to the characters. But if there's a character we identify with, we do not want anything to happen to them. We become so invested in this. Now, when I cite these kind of examples, we are looking at the manner in which same reaction, but same reaction is being inspired, with regard, irrespective of whether it's real, whether it's real or imagined. So there is something we need to understand from here now. Is it really so natural? Is it really so justified, these reactions?
먼저 남도 바타당데 켜져도 지변 빈자로 샤라르르는 니샤더르 번데 다 녀버래 이제 팀도 요마란자라 파마 집아이면 크라데요 나 시제 빈자로나 뒤에 따때 다 녀버라 뒤마이나 아니 간초 초바지르냐 변 빈자다 샤라르 데와 카이면 먼저 초바이 메르냐 나디는 진이야 dindichisuwara. Yan zamza nga dingi Jacob, dingi Lombardi, yan dindichilewara. Yan zamza tapi Jacob kaka lomba kaka chesa kaka ine jumachi ki tu ni nga ngodo shekeshin anyi ngoshe barle. Ngai pina ngai dinne zubita kala. Dadan zensa ishiro nga mambuchi lamsa trenguda. Ra Penatana, Nilanzo Hagomare. The Jumani channel and other chick passage now at our Yamang other day, Yamdo de Balan. Namsagya, Chigleunda, Ra, Rashi Leunda. Taina Azo Chita, Chisho Ton Shevane, Dingaranzo Washina, Damashina Gana, Ripada Tadan, Denanda, Mandana, Kangi Chuna, Dunga in Bachipa, Ra. But then you reach out in the Taytanian Nebachi, the Sid Ped Kechamota. Ra, Mansatin to woman. Gasala cha, Magasala dang, take it chadang on the thing, also quality chandi jijitis.
Now, similarly, look at all your relations and the manner in which you begin to identify and relate to them. Now, we think that we are relating to the relationship, but in effect, through the process of conceptualization, we are making the relationship relate to us. That's what's happening. For example, when you say that my parents, my relatives, it's only on the basis of that my that you begin to identify with them. My parents, my relatives, and so forth. Then similarly, this becomes more clearer when you begin to look at people that you don't know at all, but suddenly you form like a club of a common interest, then my club members, right? Then similarly, you begin to look at each other as you do not know them, fellow countrymen. My country, same country. So similarly, right now we don't know, it might be the case we have come to know each other, but it is the case that we didn't know each other before. But looking back a few years, a few months from now, if we run into each other, what will we say? My acquaintance, my acquaintance. So this is the manner in which that conception works. Now, as lay people, now from a worldly perspective, this is okay, the manner in which we relate to it. But when we look at it carefully, how this creates conceptions of nearness and farness, which are not established by the object themselves, but we create that conception of nearness and farness, because my friend, my family, and so forth. Now, from a spiritual perspective, it is important that our reaction in the form of compassion, love, care for others is not constricted by these conceptions of nearness and farness. We should be able to cultivate an attitude of equanimity which overcomes these nearness and farness, to be able to have sympathy, empathy, love, care, concern for the suffering of all sentient beings. So that's why it is important to overcome it.
Pena dawa chik zira nga shiro ina. Ta chunzu ka saja kaal deli da kaar jaga kaalin. Imaji Thosamling la yuji di Geshema de shisha la na. Lamsa chuzu la chile girta. Oh, yima nga su nyamda tso yinba. Ko kecha dine sheso, pe dine jaso. Ani kazi kejo nyamda nga kecha ane mama shem. Lamsa chik ten wajda. Ra. Namdi nga da dawa che mene shira tso le yima. Pe tagi eju mara chi shima jine news la ra. Andar le. Chesa nga pe kinta do nga di nzu nga zanaja tati kala na nga zo nyamdo chore nga ni geger la ro nga zo la lam ni teacher ro ya te rashi ko chi le nguda pe nga zo ya tun do man
So this is the manner in which we create more conceptual elaboration upon conceptual elaboration, and this further convolutes our experience away from reality. So, for example, maybe we look at this example. I'll give you this example. Imagine hypothetically that many years from now, you hear the news that the Geshema in Thosamling has passed away. Then if you hear this news, see, immediately, because you have attended these classes, we had this interaction, immediately it inspires a sense of a certain reaction in you. Now, if you had never heard of me, if you had never interacted with me, if you hear the news that the Geshema in Thosamling had passed away, would it inspire the same reaction? Not at all. So why is there a difference in the reaction?
Da chesa nga zo lo ke ba che pe ki shimda. Ba tene pa nga zo ba tene pa tsa chi on de gala. Ani so so da chi kala da kawaii na nga di nzu de ro ra. 아니 사마치 지지 따투에나 아니 된데기 셈발아 차슈 타올림다 지당아서 가와다 가야네 자도 미카시지 트라진디나 항상에 가이도 라 chachi mandi chik semba mandi ajuna han sang semba choy cha no bu shoi lida ne mai la phen tho da ra de sam ta kale an sama chi pare sam dunge juna ta den yu si gre shu ji nga chi bolong ji mare sam ra chi bu juna shu ji ga mi pa tembo rojne na ani sem pa phe bu lida ra.
So if we want to experience some kind of peace, a true sense of freedom from such extreme reactions, then it is important to overcome that conception of the I, or try to overcome that conception. Because the stronger that we grasp at this I, the more extreme our reaction, either in moments of happiness or either in moments of suffering. Because if you suffer, the stronger you hold on to that I, that dictates the extremity of the reaction. And similarly, when you are happy, the stronger you grasp onto that high, then you become almost unable to bear the sense of joy and happiness, which is not really healthy at all. So if we really want to experience a true sense of calm, a true sense of peace, then it is important that we work towards overcoming that grasping at the self. To overcome that, to develop an attitude of equanimity, not just towards others' suffering, but our own suffering. To understand that when you begin to suffer, that it is not only you or only suffering, that this experience of suffering is not unique only to you. It's not only happening to you. Throughout ages, throughout the world, people continue to suffer. People continue to overcome their suffer. And then similarly, when you are in a good place, not to become complacent and overjoyed, to understand that happiness that we experience in this life is fleeting in its nature. You had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. This all sounds really beautiful, of course, but it has the assumption that there is no bond between, for example, the child and the mother. The child has been in the womb for 9 months, and then it's been taking care of the parents. So there's a love bond there. So when we talk about universal love, I think it's a different kind of love than the bond between the mother and the child. So when we talk about equanimity, I think there are nuances, and one cannot assume that just because another person wants also happiness and doesn't want suffering, we should feel the same for that person as we feel for our mothers. That sounds actually...
The opposite it's the opposite actually.
The opposite?
Just as we feel love, care and concern for our mothers, just as our mothers have love, care and concern for us, we should be able to have that kind of love, care and concern towards all, rather than the other way around.
Yeah, but I think when you look realistically at the life that we're living right now, I mean, if you work a full-time job, you have children, you're trying to already kind of like care for your dear ones. How can one have space of mind for others? It's impossible.
That the kanishena dachakbodo yores.
Nache.
Tananganzogi nirin chadame betanya la jora. Nirin chadame betanya la kanishena dachaboyo resra. Ani ngena nyembo yores. In Kailaigi pa donasra tiskamuda yores. Penachashanas amaji da tuku gipara ge dewa dan korani para zidung sable la jora. Ti nganzogi ani mingoma shinjoji la tagarang chegorla na pe kamoras. Yonga yomaresra. 미신다 간조기 니링기 차단 상마 토르네라 사말에 든지 집었다고르라나 아니 파마니 보고 파마다 보고 바라기 저와라 산다니기 바라 저와 테나신 수수 빈다 빈시지 저와 어때서 데조다 두레요 마레스라 가인스나스라 간조기 심지 탐지 대화 대화다 동에 마대와 치손이나야스라 세델라 카요라이 게스라다 간조 탕팅상기 투줄라스라 메제텔라 사오체 보러와스 베나차샤나 소소 레카 드고레스 소소라 부고요레스 소소 모심바 punjadu zola tuzu tan tajong che gores ta mesig inyowa khoran thaga 타다가 들어왔다. 근데 딜엘하가 미신달라 직체라 돼서 뭐 백아포레스 대상이 뒤질라.
네. 제사래. 세운에래. 카 다라래라. 나서선 카 니리찬나라 미좀 되래 하고도. 나네 타일 칼레 카보. 네 칼레 카보 열데래 콤디잖아 칼레 제에 바치라. 이네 이치랑게 라바데 있는 오늘에 마부인 데와이나 부 데와이나 펀치긴 데와이나 상마 나저기 짭 직죠 우두가라 다 카투 내가 로지라 나저기 팬토야디 콘조게 팬마 토고라. 뒤에 가르라나 파쇼 추슈니 잘은 재면 잡아들. 콘조게 파마다 빙야다 자다디 칼라나 켜라 개쳐보지. 라. 켜가 파 이제 파텐스데 인자는 재면 잡아들. 그 부부의 잼 저가이 아니 변치 인상 순재면 잡아들. 파엔 재면 잡아. zemba wa ki chana zemba de duja re de di nalo la mitsi nalo la ngazo pen tho da chik chile ra tinde chile de war ine di shepu le puja rembu ta chana 당한 저 여바 장지 ngazo kemunduda 딩 chikungi phamare nge pingyare ngi mitsi la chik pha pen so de 자자면 되게 들어 잠잠가 저기 수수기 pinga za da choga duzugi cha신 chini doshula jewa다 파쇼라 파마 려가 치거든 대빵고에도 베기 전부다 라 이네 베드 코로나 차년 따마투네 라 라지 젬방네 데마웨 딩은도 딜리고라 nga ngisholendine pe apoche pasholendine magaya digligda nga diye bijinse nga dine zubi jinse.
So now this is indeed true when we look at it, when we look at our lived experience, and even though when we talk about the importance of cultivating equanimity, which helps us to overcome conceptions of nearness and farness, to cultivate such an equanimity in our lives is easier said than done. When we look at our own lived experience and the expectations that we have towards our relationships. So now, when we look at that, we still have to appreciate that both from the people that you are in a relationship with, your child, your fiancé, your parents, and so forth, and between you, on both sides, there is that conception still. This is important to understand. Now, there is the conception, but why is it the case that there is the relationship is still marked by love, care, and concern? Right? This is true. Up to a certain point, it looks harmless. It's a fulfilling experience when we have love for our near and dear ones. That's fine. Now, from a worldly view, that's perfectly fine. But even from a worldly view, when we become too attached to our relationships, there's still a problem. Not just for yourself, not just for themselves, but for others as well. Because at one point when you become too attached to your relationships, it's either that you project your own expectations onto the relationship. Others project the same onto you. There comes a problem. Then similarly, you become too attached to the relationship that you fail to see other people's wrongdoing. When someone else and your fiancé, your relatives, your child gets into an argument, rather than appreciating the true situation, we immediately have a reaction wherein we say that my child is blameless, my fiancé is blameless, the other person is at fault. So where exactly does this reaction come from again? So that's important to look.
Yeah, and what I was trying to say is that kind of like I understand the benefit of developing equanimity, that's so important to others, but you cannot expect to feel the same way to a stranger as you feel to your mother. You have a love bond together, you know, and it might be mixed with attachment and love, and real love. But yeah, how can one really feel that what he feels for his mother as for a stranger? Then it kind of like devalues the love that you have for your mother. If that makes sense. Or maybe it's a different kind of love. So there are nuances, you know what I'm saying?
there is nuances if you appreciate the context in which we talk about equanimity. So for example, we don't talk about indifference or apathy as equanimity. So if it's not indifference or apathy that is equanimity, what exactly is this equanimity? So even before one develops, when we are talking about the generation of bodhicitta, the first thing you need to cultivate is equanimity, even before you begin to talk about developing love, care, and compassion for all sentient beings. Tanda dila war nganzu tongyom la jora, yerin chadang ge tongyom la di dida pengyu yoba hagu ge yesra. Yina ya ani soso ge ama la tsewa yoba dabos ra. Ani mi ngo mashin juji la dinde tsewa ten la na ta yomisi wa kapor was. Ta yina dida re la ra. Yina ta nganzu ge churangi dila cheba yunguris, charab ge cheba yungir la go ta kogi. Di yore la ra. Nganzu ge da dromshido takda gotsuna nganzu ge tongyom la ge goba ro de ra. Ani churang hagu ge re la ba. Nganzu ge da junde menga ge nganzu ge june ni kharsa simji ge rimba de la. Junde menga dun la majang ngon ni thaga thangbo la de ngon do go de tongyom re da. Tongyom thangbo ngon do go ne ani ma sheba. Ani tinte ba de do go ro asma.
제가 다리 키랑이 딜리 디기더라. 배는 가서 단다기 키랑이 마 야포더라. 아마라 제와다 아마라. 소소 아마나 시기 미시 벌레 제도에 깔에 가버리려고라. 봐. 다 단다기 마디 가시는가 암 강이 갈라나 단다 아마디 갈라나 코드는 예를 키워다 마제와다 소와다 돌로 야포테와 칼라 야포테와 로조테와다 아니 소소 베 하다다 쇠라. 디르벨라 진짜 담보 알레 디르벨라.
So this is a very good question. So we will examine this further.
I would like you debate each other.
So
It's
first,
good, really, yeah, good.
when you say that you cannot expect someone else to share the same kind of love that they have with mother to a total stranger, then try to think about why exactly is it that you have so much love for your mother? Is it because from a young, from her womb to now, she has really looked after you, ensured your growth, nurtured you when you were a baby, to ensure that you grew up into a well-rounded individual now? Is that the reason?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's the reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
제가 나도 단대기 마디 들어. 당도 체인저이더라. 개문도디 마사야네 민도라. 다 단당 가서 가서는 나도 있네. 다 가서 모르니 아마 나 친구가라 아니 마체디가라 까제 가지러나 안데 치고라. 대제라 아니 마체 차네 칼라 카야야 돌로 카야 코난들 매번 때고라. 드네 러브존테 드네 가서 단다이네 가서 미치면 찾나 단다 파마 여와 있는 가서 센데 치고라. 라. 더 딘데 인상 얘기 파마라 아마라 다칼로 베 심다 뉴에 야보 유에다 아메기 아마라 로파치고서 아마다 베 타니 보여 진짜데 나를 펜토비 진짜라 레도 안 가서 나디는 도와 라 티치체 다 근데 있나 근데 아마 당고서 저 심한 아마 켈랭라 디티기더라 티갈 가리가 버려.
Now, similar to you, I also have the same reaction. Because when I look at my mother, I appreciate the fact that she raised me from when I was young. She made a lot of sacrifices to ensure that I had enough to eat, enough to wear, and so forth. So I really appreciate her sacrifices. And as such, I am also extremely close to my mother. And I really love my mother. Now, we are both similar. So now when we look at these both experiences, it still comes from this consideration, because she did so much for me. Yes.
This is partly true because, for example, my father, he was good until was the age of 11 or 12, and then he was havoc, and he created so much suffering in our family. And I haven't spoken to him in so many years. And like recently, I am contacting him, and I still have so much love for him, even though he caused so much suffering. So the other way is true as well.
The other way meaning?
The other way is that my father didn't benefit me and my family at all, but I still love him.
Did you get Amala the Abayur Laura?
Mare koi ama tanda ngala pen thok do la de geja thangbo do resra. Yina ya samlojik na korangi abanyam do koran chambo mes ngone chena. Abadigi nami la nyota mambo sons mi mambo la dubute sons ra. Ani lo mambo geja shin de mes ra. Yina ya da nyechara ani konyam de dewa da zo ne geja ji shins. Digeja shin de zama sozo kare thonan chunsola na koi nganzola dubu dagastane na ngasem ding ne kola thandung tsewa dus. Ani chezans ra inji minji ngala pen to go mendo asra. Koi ngala netse dala na de dubu dagaston na nga kola abayi la ne tsewa jiora. Di thandung doas.
Abagi kula kun zamni galia hora abagi dira kalota. Abagi ruko di abagi no mara. Tile dira. Ine chichana chuma chesa de amada chi mandi ni shuzula chi kateng te neta haumedra. Kanji abagi kula 자도 유버라 수수부가 라 근데 베도 코로나미다네 근데 이제만 근데 이는 던다 되어 커버라 네 담바네.
So now your very existence on this earth, your father played a hand in that first, okay? And then when we are talking about the relationship, then it is not the case, I don't think it is not the case that they do not have any sense of love for you at all. Because if that is the case, then even if you would have tried to contact them, they wouldn't have been really receptive. So there is still love.
Gantu karmo karayla gantu ripada thada sama phamagira ra ta gantu jang haji khelen namshi de gantu jang hamani mayo la tanda gantu lule chi zupo ya po yen dongye yen ja po yen kambo yen chamai phamagira tijira ra.
So now, from a Buddhist perspective, we say that our consciousness travels from a previous life to this life. But still, our very body, that depends on the union, on our parents. Our parents' genetic makeup really, in effect, decides whether we are tall, whether we are healthy, up to a certain point.
Tadi indu tangan tu dingye kar dugolana tagi tanda kora abala mena digda amalena khanda amadi kora gi chaw chme yemi jinda tagi dine sojon chebe jinsel ten ra tinde indu gola tanda ti amadi dile nganju gi lewaina tangan tu chaw hashi khelen na tanda amadi la nganju gi chaw da shashi da khazan ala yabu chebe jinsel chewaina nganju namba yemi chane namba yim khelewaina nabe chu khelewaina chaw hamayra hame amadi ge tinde cheers nding hema amadi ge cheers ting hama amadi nganju chaw la thoma meba be mambuta nabe chudon hiwa tende hindi nganzu chama chichi ama chinde ra tende hindi nganzu chama be sentani bora rashi ni yingo ba te pe nganzu danda shanchu gu senge ani juni be nan pe na dajin nyamje gi senche ta jinde menga de gon ra senche ta ni shi udu gala marchu simje tanche la udu tigala tende ji nganzu shiran ji resra.
So now what I'm trying to say is, now when you look at the relationship between your mother and you, there is a sense of gratitude, there is a sense of love, there is a sense of care and concern. And and you appreciate this because your mother raised you, your mother looked after you and so forth. So as such, you feel very close to her, you love her. This we accept. Now as Buddhists, we begin to extend that kind of care and concern to all sentient beings in this manner. For example, as a Buddhist, we accept rebirth, previous, past, past and future lives. So as such, if we have that sense of gratitude, that sense of love, care and concern for our parents, for our mothers in this life, then we need to look further than that. In our previous life, we did have a mother. And in the life before that, we did have a mother. And from a Buddhist perspective, time itself is beginningless. So as such, sentient beings themselves are boundless. So when you begin to think about it in this manner, then there is no sentient being who has not at one point served our mothers in our previous lives. And they have raised us with the same kind of love, same kind of care, same kind of concern. So as such, we say it is important to develop the attitude of equanimity that all sentient beings have been our mothers at one point. And this is the reason why we address sentient beings as mother sentient beings.
다 추쇼가 상나지 시와 있나라. 추쇼가 상만도 가서 달라도 공을 내버려서 배니 달라 오라. 추쇼는 상다에는 단대기 달이야. 그냥 수수 아마 제비 내걸 만들어 팬토라. 단대 아메 마디 간데 치면 나시 치요라. 라. 다 단대기 내다나 가서 지게 변조기 있나래 지게 가래 있는 지 만디는 가서 다차라. 라. 이내 가서 단다 달라도 두자 짓는 파 카티 짜 가도 짜로마도 상나 야보다나 그냥 하면 아마래.
So now, the purpose of such contemplation is to help us not to fix such fundamental identities onto our relationships. For example, when we look at the extreme case, the manner in which we relate to what we call our enemies, perceived enemies. Then to overcome that, we begin to think about the fact that even though, due to causes and conditions and circumstances in this life, he looks to me or she looks to me as my perceived enemy, from a previous life, they've been my mothers. So we overcome that manner in which we fix a fundamental identity onto the relationship.
지니야 가서 난 진짜 시시해지라. 단대마다 아마 가서 가라서 딜리들 팬도 통되기도 하스. 라. 정 한마디 야 베드 무도 제사라나. 근데로 선타와이나 아니 가상 갈래 팬도니 미치요라. 미치다 다른 갈래 팬도니 미치요라. 다 다른 얘기 받지 로바치고 가상 그 팬도니 미디 야미 땅. 다리기 팬도니 집불라 야체 거래. 근데로 채거라. 가서 냥마디 파 여기 있잖아. 라.
So then some people say that, okay, maybe that's past life, that's a different time, so we don't really care. But then that's not really different than saying that if yesterday someone really lent you a help, someone really helped you, and today you forget about that completely. It's no different than that. It's just a difference in the span of time.
Yeah. Just sanapé kale kaltana zalul leyasta. 다 딘데치 기시 단 처럼 아마를 째어요 바데 빼야 버더라. 딘데치 예바이나 미기 코랑시가 콜을 째어줘라. 딘데 째어도 갈래 파 카포니. 수수 담보 아니 수수 아마들 째어 치시츠만 하시 아니 수수 도보토모. 아니 갈래 달아 파 집었다투에. 딘데 일로 갈래 가는 거 자체로만 니마지는 한테 방투 깔래 카버리. 계시 투바이나 실로 밑다니도 상상. 아 콜미 엔지지에 민들라로 레고라. 라.
So now, this is the kind of reaction that is needed for us to effectively contemplate on this, and it is good to have that kind of reaction, because we now do realize that it's not something easy, right? To be able to develop such an attitude of equanimity. So as such, we first look at what we have.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like devaluing the relationship that you already have.
No. First, we look at what we have. Exactly. When you look at the relationship that is marked by love, care, and concern, what we have, appreciate that. And on the basis of appreciating that, you slowly try to extend the same love, same care, concern. Maybe not immediately to strangers and so forth, but to your friends, relatives, and then slowly to your perceived enemies, and then to strangers and so forth. Otherwise, if you immediately begin to treat everyone like that, someone from a worldly perspective, if someone sees someone behaving like this, they will really look at it as a crazy person. Saying that he has no conception of, he has no appreciation of what true relationship is. Okay, we break for tea.